We are going to, so we are going to start the meeting. I appreciate those of you that are on here. And I always say Chip because I'm afraid I'm going to mispronounce your last name.
It's all good. I've been called all sorts of stuff. Some intentionally, some unintentionally.
Mr. Holworth.
You got it. You nailed it.
Thank you. Wanted to come to you again. He has presented to you before, I believe in December or was way back. We had some concerns about some things then. Questions were about, well, what has he done differently? It was expressed to me that the reason he was coming tonight, especially to hear what you all wanted differently, and he was open to change that to see how he could make it work. So even though he may have something and you may have gotten copies of that, that is not the final thing and it is not in stone. So it is up to you all, instead of ragging what you see, give what you want changed, and let's talk about that. I'm also going to, because it's in the back of my mind and I'm very direct, some people had come to me saying that he had been involved before with a company that did, I think it's called American Homes, that has to do with buying to rent. So he probably figured I was going to bring that up because that's one of the reasons why I hadn't been having him to come before you all, because I was like, no, we don't need any of those. The company that does that is a huge company, not just that particular one. So it could be that he is involved with something that a piece of that company may have been involved with, but I am going to let him speak to that himself. But I have also been assured that if you all help him design something that would work, he would put in there that it's to be bought by individual homeowners and not a company, so that that could not be done as rentals. But Chip, I am going to turn it over to you now. You probably already know the folks in my area do not pull any punches and will be very open with you on what they see and what they want. So I hope you have a pen and pencil to take some notes about what's going on, so we won't hear again, well, I didn't know exactly what they wanted. And I'm going to let you start. Then if we can see the hands and things so that you can be addressed by them. I'm just going to ask, as I always ask, because I know I have some people that do a lot of talking, that we kind of spread it around. I know you all have not just questions, but have ideas of how you want to see it changed or what done. And that's what I do want to see that as well. But I'm going to ask if particular people keep talking, let somebody else come in, and then you go back later, because I think you'll have some time. So thank you all again very much for coming. I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July. And I just want to add one thing, that if you are in a development and you all had a big 4th of July celebration, that you remind your neighbors that they needed to clean that up out the street, because we had rain today, and that's going to wash all of that trash in the street, and it's going to look worse. So thank you all. Chip.
Thank you. Yeah, echoing, I hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July. I can still count to 20, so we call that a success in my house. So yeah, again, wanted to come back and talk a little bit to you guys. I mean, I've been talking with Councilmember Lee. You know, there had been a time, COVID was weird for a lot of people, doing a lot of neighborhood meetings. Y'all were seeing a lot of things. I don't know that the appropriate context was there. So we presented alongside a couple other projects during the same meeting. And so Councilmember Lee indicated that may be why there's some confusion about feedback and things like that, which I totally get. So we appreciate the opportunity to come back. I'm actually going to pick it up in a minute. We have, with joining us today, Alex Bray is on. I'm going to let him go into more detail. Alex's family has owned the property for over 80 years. So I kind of want to tell Alex a little bit about, you know, family history with the property, how they became engaged with us, kind of how we started the process to get where we are, and give a little bit of that context. Alex, if you want to go take it from there.
Thanks, Chip. Thank you, Councilmember Lee, and everyone for the opportunity to speak. I'm really representing my family in this matter. The current, I guess, property owners at this juncture are my aunt and my mother. My aunt and mother grew up in basically Antioch, Murfreesboro area. We have significant family ties to the area, and certainly this particular piece of property has been in the family for a number of years. I asked Chip to speak just because I felt like it was important to provide some context in the request, and certainly speak to the fact that our family has been involved in the area, and these aren't property descendants that currently have ownership that are spread across the country and couldn't care less in terms of what's going on. My aunt in the area is a retired colonel in the military, and my mom's a retired teacher. And, you know, I wanted to clear up also some items from the last meeting where it was the intent for the request, you know, clearing that up in terms of what the true intent was or is. I'm involved in a real estate firm in Louisville, Kentucky, for full disclosure, but really what that provides is someone that has some insight in terms of these processes and things of that nature, and can certainly recommend to family members that, hey, this process takes a while, and we can sit down and talk about the long-term intent we have for the property. Probably, I'd say at this juncture, 18 months ago, I drove down with a colleague, met with city officials in Nashville, in the planning department, just through some context that I had, to really get an understanding of what that corridor, what they had plans for it. And then I was introduced to the urban overlay that they had prepared, and it spoke to the zoning request that we had in place. And we've tried, and certainly our hiring of Chip, we've had a number of other traffic studies and other items that we've invested in, just to get a true understanding of what is going on in the area, so that when we hear feedback from folks in terms of our request, what that means. And it's not just a group of property owners going, we're trying to get the biggest bang for the buck here. Whether it's believable or not, there is true intent on our behalf in terms of finding whoever ultimately owns this property and ensuring that whatever goes into place there is something that will benefit the area. If that wasn't the case, I promise you I'd be probably asking for a lot more density and probably going above and beyond. And I, you know, and that's just not the case here. So I just want to point to the fact that our intent and the investment that we've made in time and with the city, and certainly in having Chip provide his local expertise, is to show that, you know, we want to hear what folks want there, but we also want folks to understand that, that there's a significant amount of history here. We truly care about Antioch. There's obviously significant growth in Nashville, Antioch, Murfreesboro. We are still certainly visiting the area very often. And so I think that providing some context there is important. For a number of years, we've been approached with offers to purchase this land, and having development experience myself, it's not something that we want to do. We don't want to develop it on our behalf, but we also don't want it to be sold off and turn into something that, you know, kind of disappears 80 years of history that we've had there. And it's something that maybe wouldn't be of a benefit to the neighbors. So as Chip said, we've been extremely patient and appreciative of, you know, any feedback that we received, and we'll continue to do so. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to provide at least a little bit of context there in terms of, this isn't a family that's all over the country or fighting and trying to get the biggest bang for the buck here. I mean, there is true intent, and the years that we've spent trying to understand the needs and the long-term studies that have been conducted, and also that we've you know, paid for on our behalf to get a better understanding of this area and the property and what we could do there, is something that, you know, I appreciate you all hearing. So I guess I'll turn it back to Chip as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. And so to echo what Alex said, when we first met with the planning department 18 months ago, our conversation with them was pretty simple. It was like, hey, you know, here's this property, you know, what we obviously can look at, you know, see the community plans that are over the area. We can see that there's a UDO covering the area. We can see all these things that are available through Parcel Viewer and Metro Maps. But what is your vision for this area in terms of like the Nashville Next and things like that? And it was very much a collaborative process with planning. We really didn't push one way or the other. And the result of that is the zoning regulatory SP that I know has been circulated around. Whereas we have proposed to do RM20A in the front. Basically, we've got that dividing TVA easement, which planning used both for kind of a divider for the Murfreesboro Pike UDO, as well as for the community plan change. They have CM, I'm blanking on exactly what CM is right off the top of my head, mixed use corridor between the TVA easement and Murfreesboro Pike. And in the back half of the property, well, that's not half, back third of the property beyond the TVA easement is neighborhood evolving. And so we took their guidance from the start, which is probably why that we went with a regulatory SP route, because you know, we want to get to a place where they were comfortable with what we were doing, and hope that we had gotten there with our meeting in December. Obviously, we didn't, which is no one's fault or anything like that. Glad we're having that opportunity to have that conversation now. So the commentary or conversations I've had with Councilmember Lee have been, you know, we're at the point now where we've got some conditions imposed by planning. You know, the typical things related to what building materials we can use, the amount of glazing that can be on the front, the amount of, you know, minimum lot frontage and things like that. Those are typical notes that we already have in the regulatory SP. But we just want the opportunity to see, like, and Antoinette has done a great job of sending us a list of concerns that the community talks about on a regular basis, whether it's, you know, kids in schools or speeding or whatever it is. And so we just want to be responsive to those comments, kind of hear some of that feedback, see what we can do, you know, collaborating with you guys from a perspective on this regulatory SP. So to Alex's point, you know, we can kind of get all something that makes sense for everybody. So I don't know that I have a directive of here's, you know, I need your feedback on this. This is very much more so we'd love to hear some more feedback from you guys and figure out what can and can't we do, and just continue that conversation.
Comments? I know y'all aren't shy.
I was about to say, there's no way that we're here now and we're not going to be any comments. So, yes, ma'am.
I would like to know if you've looked at what our community actually needs as far as retail. We really have been begging for retail for a long time. And that's such a wonderful location when you're driving to on down Murfreesboro Road to Laverne or Smyrna, which many of us who live this far south do go to Smyrna for various reasons. But that would be a lovely place to have just a fabulous restaurant, for example, and any kind of retail that we could get. We have Century Farms coming in, but they're not certainly bringing enough of what we would like to have. So I'd like to have you speak to doing whether you can make it work in your plan if you put some retail there.
Sure. So just engineers. We're not the smart people, the ones who really make all this work. We just do a little piece of it. So what I would tell you is that understanding. Well, I'm gonna take a step back. So I'm not privy to the decisions people make about where they do and not want to put restaurants. I can speak anecdotally to the fact that they're looking at head counts, they're looking at rooftops, they're looking at things to decide where's a good spot for a restaurant to go. And without and I'm sure there's a very complex formula that makes it very easy for them to identify a spot in town to identify that. So from my limited experience and anecdotal knowledge, I would say that I think all that stuff will come. I'm not sure it'll come without the density to support it. So again, I'm not sure that's answering your question. Like, I don't know that we're opposed to anything like that. I just don't know, like, if we told Alex, hey, this needs to be retail up front, I'm not sure that he would have right now any interest from anybody to put anything retail up front. I mean, I know we all can speak to the location, but just in terms of like the investment that it takes and the amount of rooftops they see within a circle that they draw a dot from the piece of property, if it's a good investment for them at this time versus say what happens when some more rooftops show up, maybe that evaluation changes. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, nice to meet you. I kind of told you so. That's the community is just asking for retail over and over. And we hear the response about rooftops quite a lot. But holy smokes, Murfreesboro Road has so much traffic coming and going, and it's kind of a captive audience because there isn't any place to stop there except for one, I think it's an Exxon maybe that's just down the street. And after that, there is no retail until you get way past Hobson Pike, further down on the right. Can you speak at all to that whole rooftop formula and whether there's not some possibility for something that, even if it's drive-throughs, I don't know. I'm not asking for a specific thing, just some comment and feedback on that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I think actually Alex may be better situated for this. So I'm not the brains behind the operational in terms of like what they do and don't, like how do you speak to that formula? I just, again, all my knowledge is anecdotal. I will tell you, and I'm gonna let Alex talk in just a second. I think a solution may be an option of, because right now we have some RM20A zoning, and like right now, and so we've got two community plans. We've got the community plan on the front, which is mixed use corridor, which is again between Murfreesboro Pike and TBA easement, in which retail would be allowed under a mixed use zoning policy. And then we have the back area, which is neighborhood evolving, which is strictly a residential community planning policy. So maybe a solution there is the opportunity for retail to go is if we pursue, ask if we can do maybe a mixed use zoning up front versus a strictly multifamily zoning up front. Because then it would give someone the flexibility to do something like that if it did make sense. Again, people smarter than me would make that decision. Alex, I'll let you respond if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point to bring up, because as I visit the corridor, that's certainly something that sticks out. I work with a lot of franchisors and retailers up here, and I've certainly put this in front of them as, hey, would this be, potentially a site? And at the same time, wondering if that's, again, a need of the area and the neighborhood and things of that nature. They do a very thorough rooftop analysis for the most part, and I'm just speaking generally, but at the same time, they'll have restrictions if they have a similar concept that's close, and they'll take that all into their analysis. And it's very difficult. I deal with that locally, and certainly when I had discussions about this parcel with some of them in terms of saying, but convincing them of the long-term opportunities, very challenging, especially now where we are post-COVID on the retail and restaurant side of things. The financing component for them on that side of it's tough. But again, that is not something we are opposed to. It would certainly be, we very much want to know what retailer, again, it's not, hey, we're going to pay you this and we'll put this there and we're walking away, and all of a sudden you have something that may not, fit the needs of the area. But it's something that we've talked to some folks that, again, initially at the surface level have thought, hey, this would certainly benefit folks, and it seems like a need in the area. But to speak further to their analysis, rooftops is very specific, and they won't really do much analysis on future build, future development, unless it's extremely significant, far exceeding anything we would have there.
Can you help me understand the rooftop analysis from the standpoint of, are they looking at single home rooftops? I mean, it seems like throughout that corridor going up even beyond Hobson Pike, there's a lot of building going on, multifamily homes, apartment housing, etc. And if all they're looking at is residential rooftops versus disposable income.
So they'll combine the two without a doubt. So they're certainly looking at both. But yes, and that's not to say that retailers and whether restaurateurs or just your conventional retailers aren't identifying opportunity in the area. And based on what I've seen in terms of development and have heard and spoke to some other folks in the area, I would be shocked if that wouldn't be what would be coming down the pike very soon. So yeah, but they're taking into account all of that analysis. Yes.
when you look at the 4120 Murfreesboro Road parcel and you scan back from that, you know, we get locked out beyond, you don't have to go too far back before you hit the lake. But anything forward from that up to Murfreesboro Road, I mean, it's either built out or, you know, they're coming at it for development. Now, west of Murfreesboro Road, in that immediate area of that section of Murfreesboro Road on the west side, some of that is already zoned commercial and industrial. So, but there's a lot more opportunity going north, if you will, on Murfreesboro Road.
Yeah, I think to kind of speak to, I don't want to make it super simplistic about just being rooftops. There's a lot smarter people than me to do this. I mean, they're making.
I'm going to interrupt a minute, Chip, just because somebody wrote in the chat for you to get closer to your mic because they were having a hard time understanding whenever you were talking.
Great. Can y'all hear me now? That's the first time I've ever been accused of being hard to hear. So thank you. Yeah, again, a lot smarter people than me do this. I don't want to make it just about rooftops. There's a lot that goes into this evaluation. I mean, it is, Larry, to your point, it's traffic patterns. It's how many people drive north on Murfreesboro Pike at what time of day, and will they be making right turns into that property? You know, like what do they want? Do they want a Starbucks or do they want something on their way home? You know, there's just a lot of data that is used to make some of those decisions. So I don't want to just simplify it and say like everyone needs more rooftops to get retail. But I do want to be clear that I'm not the smart guy who makes a lot of those decisions.
I don't know if y'all are able to keep up with the chat while talking. I know that's hard, but there are some questions being thrown in there if you get the chance. And I haven't actually spoken to Councilmember Lee about an idea that's been floating around. So I want to see what y'all think of this. Because of COVID and the difficulty with restaurants and building things that can be sustainable financially, one of the things that's been talked about is kind of creating pads with seating areas for whatever comes, whether it be food trucks or other opportunities. So maybe you can just look into something like that. And again, I don't know what the council member thinks about that idea, but it provides the opportunity to have a sort of changing retail and just provide the seating and gathering space for people. There really is, like the bridge next door or just down the street from y'all, even a place like that has people coming and going, there's no place to go get anything. So if you can figure out a way to meet that need for the community, as well as doing your housing in the back, I think you just would find phenomenal support. And I wondered if you can sort of run through the plan again. That's one of the early questions that got asked, is just sort of a quick recap of what the plan is. Thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we have, I'm wondering if I can share my screen. Has everyone seen I'm not able to share my screen.
Rosie can probably hit that for you in just a second. She may not be right there. Rosie, can you do it so he can share his screen, please?
Yeah, I made him the host, so he should be able to.
Check now, Chip.
Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So everyone's been minimized, so I can't really see if you got your hands up. So again, this is Murfreesboro Pike right here. This is the 11.41 acres. Everyone can see the TVA easement. The Murfreesboro Pike UDO covers this entire area. The RM6A here in the back coincides with the neighborhood evolving community plan. And the RM20A here up front coincides with the mixed-use corridor community plan policy over top of the park. This is a proposed public road running through the site. What planning originally wanted us to do was set this public road up to connect all the way through. I've forgotten the name of this property. This is on Maxwell, I believe. Don't still see my screen. At some point, they envision, well, it used to be a potential road connecting Murfreesboro Pike to Maxwell, I think it is right there. We got some pretty early feedback from Councilmember Lee that that was going to be a bad idea. So we pushed back on that, and planning was okay with that. But these road connections on Smoky Mountain and Banff Park Court, I've had some questions about those in the past. Metro created those for them to eventually be connected. And they were going to require that as part of the development no matter what. So what we're showing is public road connections from Smoky Mountain Place, Banff Park Court on those current stubs, and then into a public road that would turn out onto Murfreesboro Pike. That's generally the plan as it is. You know, we've got a bunch of notes over here. Some of the notes I've already referenced. You know, these were planning driven, you know, building facades, fronting the street should have provided one minimum principal entrance. There's a glazing requirement. You know, some other things like materials that are prohibited, raised porches, all of that type of stuff. But the plan as it is right here.
One of the things that I noticed, I actually drove through the area around 4:30 today, and it's really hard to pull back out of there onto Murfreesboro Road. Is there a plan to address that? Because right now you can only turn out into an oncoming turning lane, if I remember correctly. Do you have a traffic plan for that?
So we had a traffic study done, and so what we're proposing to do is, see if I can show this really. We have one entrance, two exits, a right-hand turn lane and a left-hand turn lane out of our property on Murfreesboro Road. We have not been asked by planning or anyone to look at what happens here on Murfreesboro Road. I imagine, you know, as things continue to happen, that will come. Something we're glad to talk to them about what they want to do. I imagine they're going to want to take a kind of a more holistic approach to what happens along Murfreesboro Pike. Additionally, TDOT will have some thoughts too, because it's a state highway, I'm almost positive. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to them about what they think, make Public Works about what makes sense there.
Everybody is being unusually quiet. I'm going to go ahead and ask if you'll run through some of the other feedback from my email, because I know those questions are going to get asked if the community does what it normally does.
Sure. So I'm managing several screens here. So some of the things that were asked are building materials, infrastructure, school impacts. We've talked about, so I'll just kind of, I'll jog everyone's memory through this email, and then we'll go back and address them. Council members are regularly asking for eateries, which we've talked a little bit about. Traffic calming by design. How to discourage speeding through there, because I do believe the speed limit is 50 on Murfreesboro Pike. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Some things about, some design questions about thefts and security, and then walking paths, community gathering spaces, and undisturbed green space. Did I miss anything? I'm kind of just scanned it real quick.
Well, I guess Chip, and I'm appreciative of you and Alex being here today to talk about this, and I hope you will commit to having some further discussions. I reviewed, I don't think I was on the call in December, but I think I reviewed the 3-page SP that you were discussing with planning at that point. And I think it's the same document today, right?
Right.
And so, we've got the regulatory SPs, and then we tend to have, rather more detailed, specific plans with, layers of data, whether it's landscaping or architecture or elevations or whatever it may be. I too have driven around out there, and what I see is some really nice homes for people that have been living there for a number of years. And obviously, Alex's family has been there for a long time as well, since the deeds date back into the 40s, I think. It's the first piece of data that we have. But in looking at them, I saw a bunch of single-family homes on that side of the street, and they had both brick and siding, and the siding universally becomes algae covered, and it looks terrible. And then I looked at the place. What is it? Maxwell Place? Is that the neighborhood next to your proposal? It too had, I believe it was a mixture of single and two family structures with again, the brick facades on the front, and something that I hold in great harmony with Councilmember Lee, our desire to have brick around all sides of these structures so that it doesn't become algae filled and less desirable. So the comparability of structures that we'd be looking at seeing are those, but we always want to improve the community. We want to increase the value of properties, which just is happening hand over fist, right? But the long-term increase in income of homeowners and of the desirability of the area to live in. So I was wondering if you could work with us on that a little bit to look at more details. I mean, this is 11 acres, so I know it's not like some of the plots like Charles Hawkins has across the street or something, but it's still a significant piece of Antioch. So, I mean, we'd just love to talk to you about that.
Sure. I mean, go, Alex. Looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to John. When I met with, I guess, the planning commissioner a while back and reviewed the urban design overlay, I mean, it was very specific in terms of what product type was preferred in that area. And I'll speak in terms of what our preference would be. We do not want to see a large vinyl siding, you know, whether it's community or what have you, development there. So yes, it's again, trying to represent our intent here without having extensive and, you know, extremely expensive development plans for you when we're just not going to be the developers, but we will certainly hold the next party in line here responsible for ensuring that, you know, we're not interested in bringing down property values. We want to enhance the area, and if it's residential, create some nice places for folks to live that certainly may be driven out of other areas because pricing's doing what it is.
Oh, it's crazy. Well, I think that's what we're looking for, Alex. And I think if we're just doing an administrative kind of SP, there are terms you can add into it that kind of sets that development pattern in motion, and that'd be great, man.
Can I ask if the request is kind of above and beyond what's required by the Murfreesboro Pike UDO?
Let me just state that we have often found that the Metropolitan Planning Department does not have the best interests of Antioch in mind when it comes to the development of our community.
Got it. So how about this? How about, because those are baselines, like because we're driven by the UDO, like that's what we're gonna have to do at a minimum. So why don't I share those with you guys, and then we can have a conversation further about like, is this acceptable? Is this not? That sound all right?
Yeah, let me stick this in there with you, because I'm sure that I spoke about it, because I actually have some things written out that when we were meeting in person, I would share with people. and you have it written in there, and you read out the pieces, some of the stuff that we had discussed about no vinyl. And I want to say, I know on another meeting I had said this, and John was saying that it wasn't in the document, but that is a piece that I always talk to developers about, that there will not be any vinyl. And as you all are aware, the other piece, I think somebody talked about it. I also talked to them about having brick on just the front as trying to fool you that it's got brick someplace else. That it's got to be contiguous around whatever the materials are, so that it looks good and it's not just trying to fool you as one thing. So those pieces are some pieces that we as a community agree that that's how we want some of it to look. Another piece of it that we have talked about, and I don't know if I've talked about it with you because we've only had that one other meeting, another piece is the setback of the garages and such things as that. And when we go in, we look at actually where the roads are and how, because I think you talked about the traffic calming. So some of those pieces may be things that don't hold up the process with planning or anything, but there's some pieces that if we are going to put something up in our area, that we want that as a part of it. And if there has to be an SP, then so be it. But those are some pieces, even if it's not necessary that they have to be under whatever the zoning is, it's a piece that we're going to add to it because we want quality, and we're looking at stuff that will last in the future. So that piece I just kind of wanted to put in there. It may not be, okay, is that something that says we have to do it in this type of zoning, but it may be something that we say we want if it's going to go up, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does. And I think, to be perfectly honest, I should have led with this. I think the Murfreesboro Pike UDO development standards can address some of these concerns. Like, for example, I'm looking at it right now, vinyl siding is prohibited within the UDO. So we would be prohibited from doing vinyl siding, or the developer or whoever else would be prohibited from doing it. So I think what I'd like to do is share some of these. Maybe I can just share some of these and we can decide like, hey, I'm good here. For example, another one I've heard reference to open space, dwellings, and one of the requirements is dwellings shall abut a minimum of 2 sides of central open space. Is that something that gets everybody happy? Is it not? Just kind of think through some things or look at some things that like, hey, this is again, our baseline that at a minimum we have to do. Are we good with the baseline, or some other things that you guys would like to see on top of that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of unfair. I think that when we talk about something as complex as the details of the UDO, urban design overlay, that's what we've got here on Murfreesboro Road, right? That's what we're addressing. I think that the images that go along with them are of significant importance too. Like if I started talking about glazing and the standards on the front and on the side, most people's eyes are going to glaze over. And then when I look at the imagery that was put into the UDO as it relates to the side of a building, I don't think that there's enough, I don't know that enough attention is paid to the side of that structure to really make it a good design, urban design standard. But that's just me. But I think people need imagery to go along with words. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I'm just trying to think of a way, because at some point, this document's got to travel throughout planning commission, throughout reviews of all departments and all these things. So at a minimum, we're going to have to come up, hopefully, or not, come up with a set of language that we can all live with to govern it.
And that should not be hard. There was a question that I can't answer. I'm looking back. I think it was from Larry or something. There were several different questions, and one had to be about the developer and if there'll be a single builder, that kind of thing. You see those in the chat?
Yeah, the question, Alex, is who's the developer? Will there be a single builder? I'm gonna kick that one to Alex.
I mean, yes, it would be preferred there would be a single developer that would certainly take into account everything that's been discussed here. We would not have interest in terms of dividing it out and having it be done by a variety of different folks. We'd like to have some consistency through whatever development does take place.
There's a question about detached homes, square footage of the homes, parking spaces for the homes, that type of thing is also in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure that we've arrived there yet. We've got, I know I haven't. So like part of the process for this is, Alex and I have been working with the planning department to get to a point where they're good with what we presented, and now we want to get good with you guys. Outside of that, there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion with people about like the specifics of the type of units or things like that. Again, that's something that we can absolutely talk about. What we're ultimately going to get to, what Councilmember Lee was just referencing is, we're going to get to a set of language and a set of rules and things that we want to see that hopefully we all can live with on what this needs to be. So we welcome that feedback on what people can live with. I mean, it's that push-pull. Y'all hear this all the time, so I must feel stupid saying it. There's that push-pull, right? Like when we do things like add retail up front, do we need to do something in the back? Like, does it still work? Does the numbers still work with single-family homes, lots in the back? And those are questions that I'm not equipped to answer. Get someone smarter than me will get down the road on answering it. So I'd be hard-pressed to tell you, yes, this would be single-family homes, because we've just got some moving pieces that will need to get solved first.
So I've got the Murfreesboro Road UDO up on my screen if you want to share it, Council Lady Lee. I just can't access it yet.
Rosie will have to allow you so that you can share that.
I can do it right now. Is it all on the standard page?
Okay. Thanks, Chip.
Yes, ma'am. This is the site page I was looking at, John.
Yeah.
Development standards.
Yeah, and that illustrates my point, is that this is a standard that somebody else agreed to. And if you look at the top, the one with the green check on it, that's been approved. That's what is approved by Metro Planning. The X one that doesn't have any contiguous siding on it doesn't. In my opinion, is that it needs to be further back, that more of that side, since the motoring public and the people in the neighborhood are going to drive by this thing and see it all the time. You can either make it nice or buffer it,
So would a resolution to that concern say be primary, see if I can highlight, primary facade materials shall not change in outside corners and shall wrap to the corner a minimum of 20 feet, 30 feet?
I don't know. It depends on how wide that wall is, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, we are talking about homes. So, and the other thing that is a limiting factor is because
your width.
Yeah, exactly right. I don't have them from manipulating right now. So it's not like we're going to have homes all the way back here. I mean, we're going to be limited in where we do something around. I'm going to stop touching it before I screw it up.
Yeah, exactly. And the comparability standard, which has been highlighted in a number of cases of late, have to be met or should be met, especially since you're tying into their roadways. So I like comparability plus, something in excess of where we are.
Here's Park Place, which is next door.
Right.
Here's the TVA line.
And look at that nice brick.
With the vinyl.
Yeah, well, gotta get rid of that for sure. Comparability plus.
It would be hardy board, then, not vinyl, because I don't like any vinyl.
But I'm with you, John.
We like to see garages pushed back from the front of the facade. keep it from being the prominent architectural feature of the home. That's what they've been doing in Antioch for a long time now. But as I say, we're trying to make it a little better for folks over here.
I want to ask, please, what is the timeline? Because it is really hard to have a conversation and any kind of support without more detail. And yet I understand that you say you're early in the process. Can you share with us a little bit about your timeline? And are you good to have 3 or 4 more meetings before another step, or just share a little bit about what we're looking at here, please?
Yeah, sure. So the timeline's a little bit interesting because from the aspect of this has actually already been through Planning Commission. When we met in December, it was in advance of our February 22nd Planning Commission date. So that has actually already happened. It has not gone to council yet. Councilmember Lee took this bill and advised that, we needed to work with the community a little bit more to make that happen. So on one hand, we've already passed the step of having to go through Planning Commission. I think our goal at this point would be to have the amount of meetings that we need to have with the relevant neighbors to address concerns that we can do through a bill so that we can go on to council. I think that would be what we would be in favor of, as opposed to wanting to make wholesale changes so that we have to start the Planning Commission process over again. Because I do think we're in a position where we can write language in such a way that does accomplish all the goals. So that's, again, if we're able to do that, I think we would be more than happy to have the meetings we needed to get everybody happy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got permission from the planning department to do a RM20 on a third of the property and RM6 on the backside of it. So you've got as dense a development approved as you probably would ever get at this point in time. And so I don't think that anything that we would do or suggest would cause you to go back to planning. Because it'd be more restrictive, not less restrictive.
Well, yeah, I think I'm not sure I fully follow what you said. It'd be more restrictive. Before I start talking,
okay. All right. So when the planning department authorizes you to move forward through authorizing your application for rezoning, you had mentioned something about a change in the community plan, but I haven't seen one of those. So I'll just disregard that. But you've applied for rezoning for RM20 on the front side and RM6 on the back side. So it does not have to go back. If we're dealing with a regulatory SP or even a more detailed SP, it doesn't have to go back to planning unless you intensify the land use or intensify the land use or the intensity of the land use.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's the two kickers are increasing density or adding curb cuts on the streets.
Right.
So yes,
right.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so let me ask this. There will definitely, because John, I know you're definitely not finished, but we will have some more. Well, did I say that funny? I'm sorry. I know you have more questions. Let me put it that way.
You speak the truth.
So there will be, this wasn't meant to be, this meeting was meant to have a conversation to see if you all were interested in this at all. And so if you are interested, this was not meant to be the last meeting to say, okay, we want this. Because we really haven't had the meeting where you talk through all of it to say, this is what you need to change. We don't want this. Look at this. I have you, what trees are you knocking down? Are you making sure that cars can get butt to butt outside without having to go in the garage? What type of traffic harming? We haven't been that specific. So there will be more conversations because I think that I hear you want to have more conversations with them. And I know that they are open to have those conversations. So we only have about 7 more minutes left, and I do intend, I know we always run over, I say this and we run over, but I do intend to stop this. We have 16 participants on here, and I'm sure that's both of them and Rosie and myself. I had some questions up here. It seems like Elma had something, and then Larry was saying something. Can I hear, and we have 16 people on here, so can I open it for somebody who has not talked to either put something in the room so in the next conversation we can deal with it, or take something out and so they can deal with that too. Can I hear some conversation from somebody who wants to go ahead and put it out there, please? Okay, I guess nobody was coming. So can you talk about your plans at the next meeting to address schools being overcrowded? Okay, so I hope you all are, and I never thought of this group as a shy group, but the overcrowdedness of the schools. I'll tell you something else that I usually tell developers too, and I ask them to meet with the principal and talk to the schools about what type of, because a piece of it is, if you want to move into the community, besides just building of the homes and the commercial, what can you do to add to the community outside of your area where you're doing stuff? So if that is donating some land, donating some money for some changes, if that's talking to schools to donate some things with them, and I do ask you all to try to have conversations with the school, not do that study, whatever that study is that developers have been doing to look at overcrowdedness, and then they come back to say, well, it's not overcrowded, it's just, this will only add 1 or 2, that whole thing is not right. So I say, kind of meet with the schools to see, and meet please with the school board member who does the schools in this area, because they could help as well, maybe with you adding some stuff, because other than just the housing and commercial, if we're going to get that, there's got to be another something to say this is helping the community out. So that piece of it. And since I have run my mouth, and we are going to have another meeting, but I'm going to let either one of you, because we have about 4 minutes to left to kind of sum up or whatever you want.
Can we, Council Lady Lee, can we communicate with Mr. Howarth and Mr. Bray outside of these meetings? Would you allow them to converse with us about some details and, then engage you in before it gets unveiled or something?
As long as they talk to me as well. And so if they have to bring stuff back to the other community, that we want to put that out there too. I don't want to
Rosie, I'm sorry, excuse me, Council Lady. I think, Rosie, we've got a hacker in the room. I just want to point that out so somebody can pay attention to what's going on in the chat. We are having some issues.
Oh, wow.
Okay, thank you.
So the people that are not identified, I think we probably need to kick them out.